welcome back and welcome to Chaim Noll for a year-end summary between Israel and the United States. Thank you, Chaim, for taking the time for this little chat about the current situation.
It's a pleasure, as always, to meet you.
Thank you so much. So, 1 year now is almost over, and how do you see this year that just passed, especially regarding to Israel and the situation of Israel and the world?
For us, 2025 was a very 2025 was a very dramatic year, of course. So we had the war still raging, and it had in 2025 it had its climax, so to speak, with the war against Iran. That was a crucial moment of the entire war, and we were not really sure as Israelis, like everybody, I think, how strong this Iranian regime was. We couldn't know before, so we thought it could be very bloody and terrible, but it turned out that they were much weaker than we all had feared. In certain circles in Western Europe, there was suggested that the Iranian regime was unbeatable or something, but that's nonsense. So it turned out that it's a rather weak and overestimated army, and even their rockets that really hailed down here in the crucial days and nights couldn't do real harm to Israel. There were, I think, 28 victims here in Israel by Iranian rockets. But after all the propaganda we had from the regime and what also their helpers in Europe suggested, it was surprisingly weak, their reaction. It turned out they had no real air defense. The Israeli Air Force ruled the Iranian space, so they could do whatever they wanted there. And the only thing they couldn't do was to destroy that deeply situated facilities in Fordo. So then Trump sent these famous bombers over with the big Buster bombs, and they did so. But in the end, it turned out that I must say, fortunately, Western technology is still much incredible higher developed than what they have. So now we have to see what will happen in the future, whether this Iranian power will recover, and with the help of China, unfortunately. So they are in a kind of allies with China now, with that unfortunate treaty they started in 2021 that provides the Iranian regime with a lot of money, but money is not all. So they can again try to build up proxy militias and so on. But Israel is now in a position, it turned out, that we can destroy it. So the end of the war in 2025, we all knew, is only a break. So we all know that it can restart. We don't know when, but we have to live with a sword nearby all the time. So we can't. The European mentality of thinking you can live in complete peace without defending yourself. Israeli people know that it is impossible. So we have, from time to time, we have to fight. We know that. So it wasn't the last round. And but 25, I mean, it was a big success for Israel on the military front, not so much on the propaganda front. It wasn't the main issue for us. We invested our strengths into the military defense. But here Israel had a big success, I must say, and the Israeli military industry proved to be strong enough, and the Israeli economy at large. So Israeli economy proved to be very strong. We had no real. So the growth is still the same as before, and so all in all, I was yesterday. I had to go to town to Beersheba to go to a doctor, and I saw how the health system works on a very high level. You get everything here, the best medical treatments, the best materials, everything. The city of Beersheba itself has incredibly developed. In the time when we came, it was about a fourth of the population of now. So the population is fourfold compared with 2000. So in the 25 years, it grew from 70,000 to more than 250,000. So that is the situation here, and people don't feel depressed from the war. There's a lot of damage, and many people were injured, and it's terrible to think about all these wonderful and gifted young people who were killed in the war, and all these people who were injured and seriously handicapped and whatever. So with damages that will last forever, lost a leg or something. But it doesn't really. So the atmosphere, the general atmosphere is still positive. I must say that. I was in a bus with. I went by bus to town, and I was in a bus with a lot of young people, high schoolers, and so they were in best thinkable spirits. You cannot. It's difficult to tell people in Europe that Israeli people are in good mood all the time, and in good spirits, even during the war and after the war. Although we know what the war has been, with a lot of cruelties and also very terrible situation in Gaza. We think about the people. We had this rain front coming now from the Mediterranean. I thought about the people in Gaza who live in tents. It must be terrible with all these waters coming down. It was like a flood, and I don't know what they do there in this situation with all the rubbish. The rubble, it's terrible also for us. We live 40 kilometers from the Gaza border, and the air is terribly polluted after the war. We have, I think they say it's 70 or more million tons of rubble, of concrete rubble and so on, there in Gaza, with a lot of poisonous stuff and so on. So we feel that. We had a lot of damage here also from the war, so to speak, with polluted air and things like that. But the general atmosphere is positive. I'm really astonished when I go to town to see all these young people in their I must say, funny. So they are in. It's difficult to describe. People expect maybe that there is serious concern all the time. They do their job very well. So also my grandchildren have been in the army during the war, and they fought, and they did it very dedicated. But when it was over, they went back to their life as it has been before, with their friends and having fun and going to university and so on. It for Israel, it's not really a catastrophe, such a war. That's what I have seen. Israeli people have grown into that role, that we can live here with a war from time to time without the feeling catastrophic or something. And I mean, it's a matter of custom, of course. So we got accustomed to that over the time. There have been so many wars now that also the young people, my grandchildren, grew up with, I don't know, they witnessed already 4 or 5 wars, and they consider it more than we do, because we are still under the European after-war shock. When we grew up in Europe, war was the most impossible thing you could imagine, and everybody was of the opinion that this should never happen again, and so on. And it's a nice idea that we could live in a world without war, but as it turned out, it's impossible. So that's also what Europe has to face. There isn't such a thing as a peaceful world. Has never been. And we have to live with that. And that's what we learned in 25. But all in all, Israel came out, I must say, like that bird, the ancient story, phoenix are coming out of the ashes. Israel is stronger than ever before here in the region. It's the leading power here now, undisputed. The Arab countries are our followers and fans in the meantime. Egypt, Saudi Arabia, even the Emirates, they all try to be in good relations with Israel, because Israel has been the only power here in the region to not only to stand up against, but to be successful against Iran. They all have feared that regime and its rocket systems and what they had, even the nuclear threat and so on. But Israel has proved to be capable to control that, and in the end, that's what counts here. Among Arab peoples, it only counts your strength, and Israel has proved its strength, and not only the military strength, also economically and in the atmosphere and the how people here lived during the war. And so it was all very convincing, and the Arab countries here around are not hostile anymore. I must say that they start to admire Israel for its capacities. So that's what I see, and that's a great success. And on the bad side, of course, is the rise of anti-Semitism worldwide, especially in Europe, where it is really terrible. So I have just been in Germany, and it is especially in Western Europe. Middle and Eastern Europe is not such a problem. Countries like Hungary and Czech and Poland, and so it's another question. So Hungary is very pro-Israel, and they have a very positive attitude towards Jews in general. So the number of Jews in Hungary has doubled during the last decade, whereas the number of Jews in Germany has halved, is shrunk to its half. So that's the situation, that the Jews leave Western Europe because of the rising anti-Semitism. but in the East European countries, they feel, well, also Israeli people like to go there. So I had a wonderful week in Hungary with I talked to a lot of Jewish people over there, and it's interesting how they come from the United States and other places, also from Israel, to live there, students and so on. So the problem is Western Europe and I must say the United States also in the moment, and Canada and these countries, Australia, as we have seen. So the liberal Western European countries, where the capacity to fight against anti-Semitism obviously has diminished. I don't know. They have no strategies. I was recently invited from German Parliament as an expert, so to speak, about anti-Semitism to talk in the committee of Bundestag of the German Parliament. And it was interesting how, I must say, they don't know what to do. So they have no idea so far how to fight anti-Semitism. And what I told them, they didn't like. So they didn't like the idea to become more consequent in their with their police and with their law system that allows all these anti-Semitic deeds being unpersecuted. They don't put these people on trial. That's interesting, although they know who they are. Those Muslim people, I must say, the 90% of these people are Muslim, and they are too, I don't know, too anxious, too fearful to put them on trial. They don't. So the judges fear to put these people. I mean, I asked the questions there. How is it possible? It's a crime after German law to call publicly, to demand publicly the persecution and killing of Jews. They shout in front of synagogues, Muslim groups, Hamas, Juden ins Gas, Jews into the gas chamber, and nothing happens. Although there are cameras that could identify these people, they could put them on trial. They don't. And I mean, in such an atmosphere, anti-Semitism is in reality encouraged. So there are a lot of nice words that anti-Semitism has no place in our society and so on. And the politicians will repeat this again and again, but they don't do anything that really can curb anti-Semitism. That's my impression. So that the weakness of the Western European countries is one of the reasons for the rise of anti-Semitism, because these people would behave differently if they were persecuted. Of course, they feel very. So they feel secure in these countries with their anti-Semitism. I mean, in the United States, there is a change now under the new administration, that the president, at least, and his institutions tries to persecute anti-Semitism at the universities, for instance. So I see it as a success that Signora Albanese is her name, I think, that anti-Semite from the United Nations, that she was taken out of Georgetown University. So these are small beginnings. I think there have many of those people have to be taken out to make possible that Jews can go to American universities again. So I don't know. So if the Western societies don't defend themselves against anti-Semitism, if they let it happen, I said in a lecture recently in Hungary, this is destroying the immune system of the society. And that's what happens. It's not so much a problem of the Jews. It's a problem of the entire society that loses its strength, its immune system. It becomes ill in a certain way because of anti-Semitism. And we know from history that countries where anti-Semitism prevails are on a downward path, and that's what happens to Western Europe.
And that's exactly the point, Chaim. The Western societies are openly blind against anti-Semitism. Probably, this is a hypothesis we can make, because the Western world is on the decline. And this is just one of the major signs. It is scary in many ways that societies where, either we have to admit that anti-Semitism was here already. It was just under the ashes.
Yeah.
And it needed just, some incitement, some little wind from the media to explode. I don't know if you have, you mentioned Germany. You are aware of the case of Mrs. Rauch from the Free University in Berlin, right?
Yeah.
She was a rector, and she had to resign because of her anti-Semitic remarks, but she did it again even recently, and there is no real scandal that some positions can express openly anti-Semitic feelings in Germany. And in Italy, there's been just recently a case, very big case of a guy has been arrested, a pro-Palestine supporter and president of this movement that has been sending money to Hamas, collecting money in Italy and send that to Hamas. And basically, this guy has had connections and pictures with a large part of the Italian political spectrum. So there is a level of infiltration, there is a level of blindness, and there is a level of madness that are worrisome.
And corruption in the meantime. So I must say that American university system seems to be corrupt insofar that organizations financed by Qatar, for instance, could take hold of universities, can so much influence the atmosphere over there. It's I think the politicians have to act, and I'm happy about everyone who does. So it's, for instance, the current American president tries a lot of things against the situation at the universities as far as he can do it. A country like Hungary is almost free of anti-Semitism, at least of publicly expressed anti-Semitism. So you don't there are no anti-Semitic incidents or something, because the government is strong at that point, and they make impossible that Arab street, so young unoccupied young Arab people come to this country, as it happened to France and Belgium and Germany and so on, where the public space is more and more going that way. So I see it in Berlin, where the elementary schools are already infected and ruled by Muslim youth gangs who take money from the other side, forbid them to wear short skirts, the girls, or something. So they have a lot of influence already in the elementary school. It starts. So I have friends in Berlin who think to leave at least the town, if not the country at all, because they have small children, and ask themselves, non-Jewish people who don't want to send their children to such a school where Muslim youth gangs rule the place. And that's what happened in Western Europe. In Hungary, you have a European country where nothing of this is happening. So nothing of this is visible. You can walk at midnight through every town in Hungary without meeting dangerous young people or something. It's almost dreamlike. And it is only because the government is strong in that point, and anti-Semitism is so far impossible. So it's well known that Prime Minister Orban is no friend of Mr. Soros. So at this point, when the left is instrumentalizing to as a proof that also Orban is an anti-Semite, but that's ridiculous. Here is rather Soros the anti-Semite in this constellation, not Orban. So they want to intensify their relations with Israel, and they do. There is a lot of economic cooperation, and it's growing, and Israeli students like to go over there to Hungarian universities and so on. It's a very good development. Chabad, the ultra-Orthodox organization from the United States, very active in Hungary. They go to the old synagogues that are often left, but there are only really so few families in some towns left after the Nazis and the communist persecution, because the Hungarian Jews were also persecuted by the communists. Most Hungarian Jews left the country in 1956 after the Soviets oppressed that uprising, and anti-Semitic purge began in Hungary. So then most of the Hungarian Jews left, and now Chabad families come over to these towns and live there and start Shabbat tables and all that. So it's a kind of socializing first. It's not a question of religion so much. They want to gather the remnants and start anew, and that's increasingly successful. And I have been in those places and with those communities, makeshift synagogues or old synagogues that have been abandoned and will now, with a new Jewish life. You have nothing of that in Germany. In Germany, they are only going away. It's completely different. Germany had a good time 20 years ago and 30 years ago, with the Jews coming from former Soviet Union, and the numbers were rising, but now it's only in decline. And it is because the government, and also, I must say, the Jewish administration that is completely dependent on the government, is not acting, is not really acting forcefully against the anti-Semitism. And not only the anti-Semitism, it's more in Germany, it's more in the meantime. It's really dangerous. They attack Jews and they threaten Jews, and it's as it always has been with the rise of Islam in Western world, a matter of Western weakness.
But it is a problem. It's an ideological problem that has deeper roots. If you consider the attack on Bondi Beach in Australia, and immediately this immense, this humongous moron that is the prime minister, might be that it must be the last name that makes them moron. He came out saying that was not an anti-Semitic attack. It was not motivated by religion. All that type of nonsense. The point is that it looks like we don't want to see that. That's the problem. They
don't want to see. It's a real culture of looking the other way in the meantime, and that was also my impression in that hearing in German Bundestag when I was invited to speak about my experience with German anti-Semitism, that they avoided to touch the real point. The word Islam is not mentioned, so I was the one who brought it, who mentioned the word first. They are very hesitant. Also, the Jewish functionaries. There was a chairman of the board of the Jewish communities at Zentralrat. It is called Zentralrat der Juden in Deutschland. Dr. Schuster. He also was in that round. He didn't mention the word Islam. He is a man who does almost nothing against that, only talking. And that will not help. I mean, not for the younger people who leave the country, younger Jewish people. They have almost no young Jews anymore. The question is whether people in Western societies are intelligent enough to understand that this is a sign of decline in general and of the bad situation for the entire society when the Jews leave the country. But I don't get this impression at the moment. So they only fear other problems. So I understand. I mean, the Jews are not the most important thing in the world for them. And they have their own country. So
you see, but sorry to interrupt you here, but what you say, it's something I keep repeating for a while. It's not the why the Jews. The point is, why are the Jews important, considering that Jews are 0.2% of the world population?
Yeah.
So they should not even be a topic of discussion. And instead, everybody talks about the Jews, not knowing anything about the Jews. Because if you ask them 3 questions, who is a Jew, they know nothing about it. Actually, they tell me an old joke of the Nazis. I mean, it's a Jewish joke about the Nazis. The Nazis, there are the 3. Jew is the one who is born by a Jewish mother, according to the Halakha. According to the state of Israel, a Jew is the one that claimed the right to return. According to the Nazis, Jew is whoever they say is a Jew.
Yeah.
And that's summarized their understanding of Jews. If you think that now we have back in place paradigms that belong to the ancient anti-Semitism, like the blood libel, the blood libel is
killing of children. Yes, for instance. Yeah, I talked about this and I wrote about it, that the old prejudice against Jews, so the old stereotypes of anti-Semitism of the Middle Ages are fashionable again, so that Jews are killing children. In the Middle Ages, they were killing children to take the blood for baking matzah for Pesach, and now they are killing Jews. Palestinian Jews are killing Palestinian children in Gaza for fun. There are people who say something like that obviously Israeli soldiers have fun killing Palestinian children. So it's really astonishing that after so many centuries, all these old stereotypes are on the rise again. Yeah, but I mean, human stupidity doesn't change, obviously. So that's the problem. I personally, if you ask me, think that Jew hatred is a special form of stupidity and lack of intelligence. And the problem is that many people are stupid and many people are not very smart, and you can tell them everything and they will believe it. And they don't like the Jews because most of the Jews are smart. And so that's the eternal problem Jews have in all times. So I don't see a real change. And the question is whether we should expect it. That's another question to how Western societies have to fight anti-Semitism because it's a danger for themselves. But the picture of the Jew in society, I mean, it has always been problematic, and many people didn't like the Jews, and this will never change. That's my opinion. You cannot take anti-Semitism out of the world, because hopefully the Jews will always be in the world, and as long as there are Jews, you will have anti-Semitism. That's a problem.
Well, but we just discussed earlier that after the war, after the Shoah, it was taboo to be openly an anti-Semite, to express yourself in such forms. And now it's actually fashionable. And, you know, I mean, we had a time like 70 years of tranquility, at least in the West, regarding anti-Semitism. I mean, the anti-Semites were minor groups of absurd imbeciles, not mainstream politicians, not media. This is happening too fast. And I mean, I disagree honestly on the fact that there should be anti-Semitism, and for many reasons, because a cultivated society cannot, an advanced society cannot be anti-Semitic. For the one simple reason: if I look at my library and I take out the books of the Jews, I will be left with 1/3 of my life. So that's already the first element you have to consider. If that's a cultivated society, cannot be anti-Semitic, period.
Yeah, in general, it's like that. I mean, if you take the Quran and take out everything that comes from the Hebrew Bible, I think a German religious philosopher Abraham Geiger has proved in his doctoral dissertation of 1833. It was called "Was hat Mohammed aus dem Judentum aufgenommen?" What did Mohammed take from Judaism? So he came to the result that 80% of the Quran is biblical material. Of course, it's distorted and in sometimes in an absurd way. Okay, but he took all the material from the Bible. So nevertheless, it's the most anti-Semitic book you can imagine. So it's somewhat absurd that they steal from the Jews the ideas and they profit from the Jews and hate them for this. That's also what the Israeli left had to learn, and they didn't understand. They believed really, as Martin Buber and these people thought, that if we are nice to the Arabs, they will love us for this. But it's a very different culture. They don't like the person who is nice to them. They don't like the person who is strong. Yeah. Simply that. And this has turned out now during the last years here in Israel. I think the Israeli young people know it, that they have to be strong. And that's what gives me a lot of confidence that Israel has such a wonderful youth, strong and intelligent and smart, but they are ready to fight and then to go again to their very sophisticated intellectual work, back to their work and continue with that. Also, the situation in Europe is not that negative, not as negative as it seems to be in my eyes, because there is also a very strong Israel supporting part of society. It's more hidden. These people don't go into public with that so much, only a few of them. But I felt a lot of solidarity during the war, also when I go to Europe, even in Western European countries. You meet a lot of people who sympathize with Israel and with the Jews in general. And the media gives a very distorted picture of society in general, not only in this point. But here it leads to the impression that the society is overwhelmingly anti-Semitic. I don't believe that. I think that many people are not anti-Semitic, but they don't they are not publicly present. So the media, I must say, in Western European countries are really in a very bad. It's a very bad role. So they take a lot of damage. And I said this also in this hearing in Bundestag, that the media are responsible for the rise of anti-Semitism because of their staunchly anti-Israeli attitude over decades. It's going on for decades now that this Israel bashing, and there are generations have grown up, for instance, in Germany, who never heard anything else. So they hear on one side that the Jews are victims, and we are not allowed to victimize them again. And on the other side, they will be told from the media every day that the Jews are criminals, killing children, and so on. Of course, there is a kind of schizophrenic attitude toward Jews, and they don't know what to make out of it. The problem is, for instance, that when Israel is at war, you cannot really travel here. It's very difficult. So traveling to Israel has helped a lot to change the attitude of people. I have witnessed that with students we had here. We had a program here at university for more than 20 years with German students coming to Israel and starting their studies here. I was in the center. I worked with them, and I met a lot of young Germans who had very bad prejudice against a lot of stereotypes regarding Israel, and came to Israel for the first visit and changed completely. Their picture changed completely, only confronted here with the atmosphere and with the young people here. They completely changed. They told me, I cannot believe what I see here. It's absolute contrary to what I have learned in Germany. So the problem is, during the war, they don't come. So this program is cancelled now. We are in war since years, so to speak. It took us 3 years or so. All the thing will go on. So it's still complicated to come here. It's not a place of mass tourism at the moment. So that's one of the problems. But I think the general problem is the attitude of European media that is catastrophic consequences for and mainly responsible for anti-Semitism in my eyes in Europe nowadays.
And when you said the Jews as a victim, I believe that one component there is also the fact that they do not like when the Jew is not a victim. Because
right. Yeah.
This is very strong on the left. I know personally some stanch anti-Semites, but when you talk to them about the Holocaust, when the Jews were the victims, the Jew as a victim, it's fine for them. But if the Jew defends himself, then it's unacceptable.
Yeah, it's like that.
That relates the anti-Semites in Europe also with the.
I think that both pictures are false and not helpful. Also, the picture of the Jew as a victim, I don't like that picture because it's not true.
But in the Shoah was true, unfortunately.
Shoah was partly, let's say, partly true. There was a lot of resistance also from Jews, and I mean, that's completely ignored.
Yeah.
And then you shouldn't forget that in the same time Jews went to Israel and built up the state here. So in the same time when Jews went to the gas chamber in Europe, there have been here Jews living in the kibbutzim and building up the country. I mean, when it was founded in 1948, it was, so to speak, immediately after the biggest onslaught ever on the Jewish existence. And these people turned out to be capable after that attempt to completely extinguish it, to build its own state in such a short time. It was prepared for, of course, for many decades have living people here. So I wouldn't say that Jews were only victims in this time. So there have been many Jews fighting here in Israel and building up the country. It's I think that's a problem, that both pictures are wrong. The Jew as a victim and the Jew as a killer on the other side, as a criminal or whatever. It's both wrong. And to understand the very complicated situation of the people here and the strange, I have tried a lot during the war to explain what happens here in European media. I wrote all the time for European papers and magazines and so on. Really, I must say, it wasn't so positive, because I abandoned my own work. I stopped writing my books for weeks only to write for the papers in our attempt to explain what happens here. And one point I cannot really explain to European young people is that the young people in Israel are warriors, and at the same time they are very tender and sensitive intellectual people who play the piano and who read a lot of books and are educated. And so that's for them not to bring into one picture that a person can be a warrior, and a real warrior, not only wearing a uniform. So they are real fighters. They call themselves fighters. The name of the soldiers here in Israeli society is the Hebrew word for fighter. And they feel like that. But at the same time, they are young intellectuals, tender-hearted and good-hearted. And so how to explain this to European youth who think that you can either be an intellectual and a feeling person, or a fighter in war? So they cannot bring this into one picture. And it's really very difficult. So I think that European countries will soon be in the same situation as Israel is now, that they have to fight. And we will see what the European youth will do then, what the young people in Europe will do. I'm not sure they will run away altogether. They are altogether cowards. I don't think so. I think they have also the potential to fight and to defend their countries. They don't know yet. They don't know yet what will happen and how they will behave. At the moment, they can't understand young Israelis. And at the moment, it's difficult to talk to European young people about the war, because war is a completely negatively connotated item phenomenon in European thought. And I mean, of course it is, after two world wars starting in Europe and all the terrible things that happened in Europe. So of course they recoil, they shy away from war and all this, and the Israeli people do not. So how to explain this? It's very difficult. I must tell you. So I tried my best. I wrote about it in Neue Zürcher Zeitung, I think in September, about my attempts to talk to German youth about their the young people in Israel and how they live here, and it's almost impossible to explain. That's the problem. So they should come here in great numbers if possible and meet them and see it. But with the disinformation of the European media, they will not understand anything.
But usually people fight when they have a reason to fight, and that has been the history of mankind. People do not sacrifice for Angela Merkel or for
Yeah, right.
the concepts of the neoliberal order or whatever that is. You have to give them some. Recently, probably you don't hear this, but there is a big problem in schools and universities with young people committing suicide, and which makes total sense after you consider what is expected from them, what kind of world is presented to them. Either you conform or you are an outsider, or a world that doesn't make sense. You have to give people a world that makes sense to fight.
Yeah.
Judaism is a coherent, meaningful system.
Yeah. A meaning is the most important thing. I think that for many people it's more important than anything else, that their life has a meaning, and that's the problem. Yeah, I agree with you that it is more and more difficult to find it in Europe, and it's also a strange phenomenon that in times when Europe had the highest living standard ever, and obviously it was in the best situation ever, the number of depressions, so the depressive illnesses connected with depression, mental depression and so on, was on the rise, and is still. What you say about suicide, it's only the peak of a general culture of depression that I see. Whenever I talk to German young people, they seem to be depressed in a certain way. They're not. It's strange. It's strange. So that's not with the Israeli young people who had a reason to be depressed because they have seen terrible things, but they are not. So they were with their buddies in war together, and the social atmosphere is positive, and they feel welcome in the society, and that all the love of the older people is with them. So it has also to do, of course, it's another topic we have to touch, demographic development. I mean, young people in Europe feel more lost in a world of old people when the majority is old. Here in Israel, it's a contrary. It's at the moment here you will not believe it, but it's almost 2/3 of Israeli society is younger than 35 years. So and these young people have been in the wars. I mean, it's a complete young society. People live long here, and nevertheless, because of the high birth rate, it's still about 3 children per mother, whereas the usual European birth rate is 1.2 or 1. I don't know. Also, Italy is so much in decline. I learned what I never could imagine, because Italy is such a children-friendly country, and people love children, but nevertheless they have no children anymore. So it's a strange development, and all this is, of course, contributing to the feeling of depression for young people. It's not here like that. When they feel that they are the main force of society and the most important impulse that everybody respects, and there is a lot of respect towards the young people here, because they are heroes and they fight and so on. Yeah, it's difficult to explain, and all this contributes to the confusion and uncertainty that causes anti-Jewish feelings, and then is, of course, leading to rising anti-Semitism.
But yes, Israel seems to be a society with a future, and once again, the future is made of ideas, but also material concepts. When you see what the political class has done in Europe in the last 30, 40 years, destroying basically the healthcare system. Germany is a perfect example of that. I mean, leaving it's become, Germany was a social democratic country. Now it is what? It's a deindustrial country to the way of deindustrialization, a country where prices for houses are everywhere. Inflation is a real thing, but I mean it's a trend of the world. So why would young generation, apart from all the terror that the world is going to end, that the climate, all the problems presented to this young generations and no solutions, it is there is a very important that you see somehow all the time, even in the United States. It's Viktor Frankl, at the search of a meaning for life, which is a very interesting book about this, because I mean, Frankl had the experience of Auschwitz. And he starts this book from Auschwitz. People read this book nowadays at the search of a meaning for life. And
he said that he has only survived because of thinking about this book and thinking about this idea but it was his theory, so to speak, that meaning is the most important thing in life, and that everybody has to find their meaning. And that's a problem in Europe. It's more and more difficult for young people. So, but I'm not really pessimistic. So I think that they will find it. So there will happen things that they overcome their depression and act. I mean, they have to. The situation will worsen, and these countries will become more and more endangered by intruders. Let's say in general, whatever people, whether it's a threat from a country like Russia, that is, in my eyes, somewhat real, although there are people who say it's not. But I think there is there is always, society is always threatened by from external forces when it gets weak. So that's a way of history. When a country is showing signs of weakness, there will always be people using that situation to intrude, to get aggressive. They become aggressive even if they have been friendly before. And that's the situation with Europe now, that from all sides, it's not only the intrusion of the Muslim youth that is so dangerous, it's also, there is a real danger from Russia, for instance, and China more in a civil way, but they also see the weakness of the European countries and try to make their and try to misuse it, of course. So they support Russia, they support Iran. They play increasing also here in Middle East a role that to undermine the situation and to. We have underestimated the imperialist impetus, but that exists. So there are imperialists, at least as the West is imperialistic. So we have to face the situation that the West has to defend themselves, in general, the Western countries, to survive. So now the question is, are they that weak in the meantime that people are not ready to fight to survive? Until now, they don't see this situation. They don't feel the threat, really. It's widely ignored, and So when you go in certain parts of Germany, you don't see it. In Bavaria or Baden-Württemberg, and there are still beautiful, idyllic places where nothing happens. So many people ignore the danger. So other places are already really afflicted. For instance, North Rhine-Westphalia, so the Ruhr area where the former German industry, the big cities like Cologne and Dortmund, Düsseldorf, there you feel that they are already in a situation of being taken over. The same with parts of Berlin that are taken over more or less. Parts of the town are in Muslim hands now and under Muslim influence. So, but many people try to ignore this, but there will be a certain, I mean, I speak out of experience. Also, Israeli people tend to ignore the danger. We have ignored the danger, obviously, before October 7th. And that's the problem, that when you will have your peaceful life and your work and you are occupied with that and you don't think about it, about enemies and threats and so on. But then at a certain point you have to act, and Israel showed to be capable to do so. And the European countries have also to act. They have to act. It will happen. I don't know how. So there will be other political parties. I mean, they are on the rise, by the way. There are different political parties in all European countries. And I mean, we don't know how long will Mrs. Meloni in Italy will be in power, but if she has more time than one period, if she can rule for a longer time, then she will also change many things in Italy, and that she is doing already. So there will be different governments in future in Germany, and it will encourage young people to defend their countries, I'm quite sure. So I'm not that pessimistic, because this has never happened in history, that so strong countries as the European countries still are, give up themselves completely. So they are weak, of course, but they will fight back at a certain point. And also there, people will find themselves in that. They will find their meaning in that.
I don't know. So I'm not convinced of for several reasons. First of all, because we have been through a long process. I mean, of course, Chaim, we are opening here a big parenthesis, because it depends when this decline of Europe and the Western civilization starts. That's the very first element here. Your hypothesis is that we are somehow now at the same point where the Ottoman Empire was in the 18th century, 19th century, where everybody was taking a piece of it. But we don't have to forget that we are in a nuclear age, and it seems that people have forgotten this. And we all grew up under the MAD system, the mutual assured destruction system. So it's an extremely complex scenario that we cannot really handle like the media does or the politic does, just saying the bad, okay, Russians, bad Putin, whatever. But the point is that who is willing to destroy mankind because Putin is bad? I'm not. I'm for different kind of solutions, and this aggressive stance is a no-go, especially when Germany talks so openly about rearmament. These are really dangerous things. And on the other hand, in a continent that has deeper issues than what just appears, because the Islamic problem, they say the extremist Islamist. No, it's not the extremist. It's an ideology that sets standards that are antithetical to the standards of Western civilization. that sets inequality at its core, inequality between women and men, inequality between Jews or Christians and Islamists. So it is and we are so deep into the confusion. We are currently in the West fighting among ourselves if roosters lay eggs or not. So it is really, I see in way more pessimistic this scenario, because as we understand, since the Gibbon at least, we understand that empires, civilization collapse from the inside, not from external threat. That's small country versus a big country, yes. But look at Poland. Look at the Polish. They've been attacked from Russian, from Germans, from everybody since centuries. They're still there because they hold. They have firm standing. Israel, another example. We do not have a firm stand anymore. That's where we are in a problem. I really, how do you want to reconstruct a culture when today, when you say Western culture, is like you're saying, I don't know, crazy stuff, instead of looking at the peak of our civilization, which means human rights, which means equality for everybody. No, we look at, we had some slavery. Yes, everybody had that. You see, the problem is that the brain is what feeds the body, and the brain for society, it's its culture. And our culture is completely in the hands of mad people. And that's a problem, because that reverts to media, reverts to politics. The politicians, that when there is an attack on Jews, what is their first go-to reflex? Let's not be Islamophobic here. Really?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
That's madness.
Yeah, it's like that, but nevertheless, we always come to that point that I'm more optimistic than you are. Maybe we have to be here. I don't believe in that, and I think that there will be changes and developments we cannot foresee. And I agree with you that the confrontation with Russia, for instance, is not very smart. So Europe should avoid that. On the other hand, they have to show, as a general attitude, their readiness to defend themselves. That's what lacked. That was lacking during the last decades. So the picture of Europe was of a rich but defenseless entity, and this they have to change. Of course, they have to demonstrate the readiness to defend themselves. That doesn't mean they have to become bellicose, but they have to change their impression, and I think that's quite normal, and that will happen, of course. And this will maybe also change their attitude towards dangers from within. So they have a real threat living already in their countries with the Muslim so-called minorities. I mean, there are minorities, but they are very, very aggressive and in some places already ruling minorities. So they have to change their attitude towards them. And I think they will. I'm not sure they will always be giving away, as they have to defend themselves, and it's quite natural that they will do.
Like in England, you mean? Like England, you mean?
No, I don't think. No, I don't know. People will go, yeah, maybe, but it's a beginning that people go to the street and tell their what they think. What happens in England, for instance, that many people go to the street to. It seems to be a little bit absurd at the moment when they say we are British. So, but I mean, it's a beginning. They are British, and they want to remain British, and that's a very normal development in my eyes. So we will have this in all European countries. Of course, nationalism will be on the rise. Of course, it has to be. It's also the problem in Israel. I mean, Israel is what you could call nationalist country now, with a patriotic country. So then it's the border between patriotic and nationalism, or nationalism is a bad word because it's already negatively connotated, that you are proud on your national belonging, for instance. So as I also saw in Hungary, where young people say, I'm Hungarian and I'm proud of it. So that's a normal thing in my eyes.
Of course it is.
There was completely lacking but this is, in my eyes, possible to revive. That's possible to revive very quickly.
But it is also, once again, what we were discussing is the madness that our society is in it, because without nationalism, you cannot have nations. I mean, all European countries have been through a nationalistic process to become what they are.
Yeah, officially, the European Union was obviously they wanted to overcome the pattern of nations, so that was wrong. And I think many European nations see that in the meantime, or the majorities, that is wrong. So the European Union administration, the idea as such is a very good one, so to have Europe in peace and so on. But there was an administration coming up during the last decades that becomes more and more despotic and unpopular, very unpopular. And in countries like the Eastern European countries, or Hungary considers themselves a middle European country. You should never make the mistake to tell them they are Eastern European country. They consider themselves the middle of Europe. They are not that wrong in that point.
They're not wrong. Yeah.
So, but they have no problem with the concept of nation anymore. The people are, they think that's the right way to be a nation. And the other, I mean, the Germans have a special problem with that. I don't think the British have that problem, and the French and the Dutch. So they have all played along with the European Union. But that doesn't mean they have lost the idea of nation. So they will return to that. And that will maybe increase the tensions between the European countries, but in general, it will make the European countries capable to defend themselves again.
Yeah, hopefully.
Hopefully. Let's see. We don't know. We wanted to talk about 2025, but we all the time speculated about the future. So.
When you have this New Year consideration is always the whole.
Yeah, that's interesting that 25 was a year where we all feel that ways leading into the future have been maybe predestined or prepared in this year. At least we in Israel feel like that what happened here in 25 was meaningful for our future.
Indeed, also because it is correct. I completely agree on the analysis that now Israel is the major, saying that Israel is the major power in the area. It just means that it has the ability to stabilize the area. And that's what's really important. Because people would misunderstand. Oh, you see, they want to be. No, that's not the point. The point is being strong means being capable to stabilize the area. And that's fundamental in the peace process.
That's interesting that the year, in the last week of the year, after being in war with Hamas, Israel started with a lot of peaceful projects with other Arab countries, as the new treaty with Egypt, for instance. So you see that in the moment when Israel has demonstrated its military prowess, so then it's possible for us to start new process in peaceful cooperation, economic cooperation, and so on. I mean, Israel could be, with all the intellectual power we have, and that doesn't stop. When I see the children here in the street, I sometimes I had the feeling yesterday, maybe you will laugh about me, when they came into the bus, all these school children, I got the feeling there are many geniuses about them. They look like that, and they are. I mean, what they did here, Israel is the first country that developed a defense system that only works with laser. We don't need rockets anymore. We can shoot down every flying object only with laser. I mean, all these developments, the intellectual power that is concentrated here could be such a blessing for the entire region. It's still a desert region. Most of the countries are desert and have problems to survive and to struggle. A country like Egypt has really problems to survive the next decades because of lack of water and energy and everything. And Israel could be such a blessing. And if they would understand, I mean, this could be great perspectives for future if these countries would change their attitude towards Israel and work with us peacefully together. And this is also what opened up in 25. So these perspectives.
I always make the example of this new pill that has a camera and can analyze you internally without for surgery. And I always say, by joking, this camera should be used after people sign a declaration saying, I'm not against the existence of the state of Israel, because that's Israeli technology. You cannot be such an hypocrite as to say Israel should not exist, but then I take advantage of Israel exists.
Right? Yeah, that's really absurd that people live on Israeli products a lot. So when you must tell an anti-Semite whether he could live without a USB stick, for instance, that was the invention of an Israeli engineer. So in many things people even don't know about. So yeah, it's like that, and it's, in my eyes, it's only the beginning. So the Israeli youth is really a pool of great possibilities and of genius.
The Technical Institute in Tel Aviv is at the same level of the MIT in here. You know, actually, some would say even higher. The quality of scholarship. I mean, it's without doubt. There are no doubts about this. In Italy, there's been a case like this year, 4 or 5 months ago, of two geniuses. One was a medical doctor, but and another one a nurse, and they made a video throwing in the garbage some, I think it's Tevia. There are medicine from Israeli pharmaceutical called Tevia.
It was a big,
It was a big case because, as a medical doctor, you cannot refuse, and those medicine are very important for a few illnesses. And she said, we are not going to use this, we throw it away. But if you don't use this, you will have patient die.
Not many people will do that. No, I don't believe it. Yeah.
Of course, people, there was an uproar, etc. But we are that nonsensical right now, as you say, because we don't know. People don't know what kind of contribution Israel does to the world. They don't know. They don't know.
No, they don't know. Yeah, that is what the media could tell people, and they could inform about what Israel does here, what really happens. And that's, I must say, really something I have to blame the European media for. I don't know how it is in Italy. It's somewhat different. For instance, I read the Corriere della Sera. It's quite
they're horrible,
bearable. Okay, In Germany, there is only some alternative. It's only the Neue Zürcher Zeitung is the leading paper. The others are all anti-Israel. Yeah, that's stupid. I mean, it's for their own. It's their own loss. It's their bad. It's for Israel finds other partners. That's not the problem. Israel has partners in the east, for instance, with India and Singapore and those countries and South Korea. So there is an intensifying with Japan, the cooperation. So when the European countries are that stupid to not to work with Israel anymore, I think the governments will look into that. The German government is very eager to cooperate with Israel in high tech and military high tech. Mostly they need it. So I must say that the year 25 all in all for Israel was a very successful year, although we are somewhat battered and all a little bit tired now after the strain of the war, but we are in good spirits and high spirits looking into the future. And I think this will also radiate into old Europe, back into old Europe, and give them some of our optimism.
Always your optimist, Chaim. One last question for you. You know, there is an alliance that you have forgotten to mention, and I look at it extremely favorably because it involves two of my most loved countries after the United States, which are Israel, Greece, and Cyprus.
Yeah.
Heard of this wonderful alliance? How is it going? Is there any progress on that? Because that would be great, because would also contain Turkey.
It's a great development. Yeah, it started with finding these oil fields in the Mediterranean north of Haifa that bordered to oil fields that are in Cypriotic waters. So then from Israeli side, there was a readiness to cooperate from the beginning on. It came to the point that Israel and Cyprus are working together with these oil fields. Then Greece was taken in because there was early the idea of building a pipeline into certain European countries. That's still working. So then the relations between Israel and Turkey deteriorated, and that's always because of the old hatred between Greece and Turkey. It's always for Greece an invitation to become a friend of Israel when we have bad relations with Erdogan's Turkey. So I must say that I think it's a better situation now. So I prefer Cyprus and Greece before Turkey. And I think it was a wise, I mean, Israeli foreign policy has been very successful. It was also a great idea to acknowledge Somaliland, although we are the only, Taiwan and Israel are the only countries until now who did. But it's a strategically crucial place, directly in front of the Houthi of the Yemen threat that threatens the entire ship traffic between Asia and Europe and the Egyptian channel. So canal. No, what is the word for? It's canal. Yeah, the English word for
channel.
Okay. And this is very important that Israel has a successful foreign policy also in Africa. It's for me it's interesting. I have African friends and they are very pro-Israel, more than European people, and they tell me what Israel has done in their countries and how they help them build up this or that. So Israel is very active on all these fields. You will nothing find about this in European media. It's really what I have to say about European media is not so much that they are now during the war have been anti-Israel. That's only the peak of the iceberg. They have been completely anti-Israel in so far that they never reported about all the successes Israel had in the last decades. Only negative things, only problems. But what Israel did well, and we did well a lot of things with the many places in the world, and Israel has a lot of support that is not that officially visible, but it is existing. So, and I could tell you stories all the time about that, and that's why this Cyprus Greece project is an example how flexible also Israel's politics are, so that when the situation with Turkey deteriorates, we find other partners who are happy to be partners of Israel in that situation, and it was very smart, I think, this treaty between Cyprus, Greece, and Israel, and it will be in progress. I'm quite sure there will be more of that.
It's a great partnership, and I hope will raise the problem of the occupied territories in northern Cyprus, because everybody talks about imaginary occupied territories in Israel, but nobody talks about the real occupied territories in northern Cyprus. The usual problem we have in our time and age. But anyway, we had interesting talk, and I thank you
very much. Yeah, I must say, so I'm always astonished how it brings me into motion when we talk, and that I tell you a lot of things. I think it's quite interesting talking about the positive aspects also. I mean, there is a lot of a lot of negative things have happened in 25, but I think the prospect is quite positive. We can be optimistic.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but at least we had good results in 2025, and it looks like it will continue, hopefully in 2026, with the hope that we're not jinxing. we do not jinx.
Yeah, let's hope. Yeah, let's hope.
But
pray. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chaim, and I wish you all the best for a wonderful new year.
All the best. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Good night.